Good afternoon, guys. Ranter's back because the urge to rant is rising again. And, for the last few videos, I, uh, I had sort of a running hypothesis as to why Trump acts the way he acts in certain aspects. How, he doubles down whenever he's being a racist asshole towards the squad or to the towns that, his rivals of a different skin pigmentation comes from, and or doubles down on any of the nonsense that he says via Twitter or whatever. You know, all the stuff that draws our attention, draws the media's attention, draws the media to have panels talking about what he's saying and why he's saying it, and getting the headlines. And my running hypothesis is that that stuff is the stuff that he wants you to pay attention to, because no matter how awful that bullshit is, that bullshit is bullshit and it's nonsense compared to what's happening underneath. So while we're having this impeachment inquiry, and while he is flailing his hands saying that Nancy Pelosi is committing treason by okaying an impeachment inquiry, while Adam Schiff is committing treason by running the impeachment inquiry, all the while that is happening, we suddenly find out yesterday that we're pulling out of Syria and letting Turkey just roll right in and roll right on top of the Kurds. And so let's just say, there's an agreement with the Kurds. Yeah, something like that. It's one of those things where you don't think that you really have a dog in a hunt when it comes to, like, saying the fate of the Kurds. But the Kurds have been our allies since the first Gulf War. And almost by clockwork, we leave them hanging. After the Gulf War and Saddam Hussein was still in power, the Kurds still got the shaft from that. They were on our side during the Iraq War and the Afghan War. They weren't far in Afghan, but nonetheless, they were our allies. And again, they get shafted again. And now, they were the ones that were doing most of the fighting in Syria, because we didn't want to dirty our white little gloves to really get into there and get into heavy combat where we might see casualties. So they did most of the fighting for us. No matter what their personal motivations are, they've been our allies. They've been kicking ass for us and taking casualties for us. Again, they probably have their own motivations, they have their own reasons for getting into these fights, but nonetheless, our boots were less on the ground because their boots were. And Trump has a nice little call with Erdogan, and now Turkey gets to walk in. Erdogan gets to do his precious ethnic cleansing of the Kurds, because they consider the Kurds in Turkey and the Kurds in Syria, they're terrorists, right? This is not just like some ancient blood feud that's been going on for centuries. Oh no, they're terrorists. So they go marching in, and Trump tries to cover this with his tweets that say, well, if they do anything with the Kurds, well, then I'm going to crush them economically. I'm going to crush them with economic sanctions. I will destroy their economy. I've done it before. When did you do that before? That was an interesting line. We probably want to hear about that. And, well, hopefully we'll get into that at some point and figure that one out. So, yeah, don't do anything with the Kurds. Just invade and go whatever and whatever. It's the funny thing how, we hear about this, and at the same time, it seems like the Pentagon heard about it at the same time we did, because they were not consulted at all. It's just that he's going to give the green light and he's just going to pull people out. Or officials are saying that no one's being pulled out, that they're still there. At this point, do we really believe? And even hours after the tweet was made that, if they do anything to the Kurds, that Trump will economically crush them. Then we find out through reports that the Turks were already bombing the places that the Kurds are, last night. People, because of this president, the word of the United States of America to the rest of the world is shit. If you were an ally of the United States and you put boots on the ground in a mutual cause, and you expect us to have your back, this president says no, the United States will not have your back. He will give you stupid reasons why he will pull us out of the situation. Everyone else needs to step up. Everyone needs to step up. We can't do everything. Remember, we used to have pride in being a world power? It's one of those things where you're going to get into these stupid little arguments about, well, didn't you want to get out of there? Didn't you want to get out of there? Do you don't want any more wars? Yeah, we don't want any more wars. We don't want to get into stupid wars. We don't want to maintain stupid wars. But the problem is that you cut and run like a clean rip out. You don't leave your allies hanging. And this is leaving allies hanging. This is leaving allies who've been fighting for you, fighting in your stead. For their own motivations, fine. They're still fighting in your stead. Your boots were not in the ground when they were. And now you leave them. You leave them to an ally like Turkey, whose leaders treat your allies and the Kurds as terrorists, and is very eager for you to get out of the way so they can kill them. And, why? What's the big hurry? What's the big motivation for us to abandon our allies like this? Well, maybe the motivation is something that was tweeted out by, of all people, Ivanka. Where Ivanka was so pleased to tweet out that Erdogan was happy to announce that there's going to be a Trump Tower in Istanbul. That tweet got deleted by Ivanka. Well, not before people saw it. And people screenshot it, and now it's being spread. So timing is everything. Wouldn't that be a sick fucking reason for this to be going down? That we'll step aside, we'll let you invade Syria, we will not involve ourselves one way or the other, and if you happen to go and exact what you wanted to do, which was to kill Kurds, that's fine. Thanks for the Trump Tower in Istanbul. You don't leave your allies hanging when you leave somewhere. When you pull out. And one of the byproducts of what could happen here is that amongst the Kurds fighting against ISIS for us, they also captured and is detaining 10,000 ISIS fighters, Sunni fighters. Sunni Turks are invading Syria. The places where these prisoners are being held, I'm assuming without us being there, is not going to be sustainable. So, these ISIS fighters would be freed. I'm sure they'll be given a stern talking to never do those bad things again. But that's an unstable element that'll be set loose, and who knows? Maybe they'll go and see the error for their ways of their belief system, or their, you know, nationalism, quasi-religious amalgam, and go live a peaceful life. Or they'll pick up the AK again, they'll gather in groups again, and they'll operate in cells. I had an epiphany last night when I was at work. Bear with me with this. But I think we treat our foreign policy like we treat our medical industry and our insurance industry in medicine. Way I say that is that there's more money in the treatment than there is for the cure. Notice that we don't really cured anything since like polio. We're not trying to end, or they're not trying to end people's suffering. They're trying to mitigate people's suffering. They will want to keep you healthy, you know, as long as you keep coming back and getting your prescriptions for your pills, for your medications, and your annual treatments at the hospital if you're really that sick, or you need to have this, if you need to have these treatments in order to continue. It's not as if they're trying to cure your ailment. They're trying to maintain your health. You know, long term. You're in a long-term lifespan of going to the pharmacist, you know, every other week to fill out your prescriptions. You know, that's a constant cash flow. You know, this is obviously a cynical way to look at this, but it's also kind of factual. I mean, if you really put the effort, if the people really put the effort into, you know, curing our plagues of the day, you know, instead of just, oh, we'll just make you feel comfortable for the rest of your life. We will fight the symptoms. We won't fight the cause. That kind of reminds me of how we are in our little foreign adventures these days. And, you know, and it's not just Trump. This is for us in the past couple of decades, especially during this time from 9/11 on up, we've been having this type of situation where we go into war without an expressed goal. It used to be, you know, we go to war, we have a set of missions, we have a set of tasks that we must accomplish. And if we accomplish them or fail them, which will determine the outcome of this war. World War II, defeat Nazi Germany, defeat their allies in Italy and Japan. And you go backwards from that. The thing is that I think the waters got murky in terms of our goals in war. Historically speaking, I think at the start of communism, and then when we were fighting the satellites of the Soviet Union, but we weren't really fighting Soviet Union. So we would go into Korea, and you know, we would have some kind of express goal of you know, not making sure North Korea didn't swallow up South Korea and make the whole thing a communist nation. But again, we didn't even call the Korean War a war. That was being called a police action. And then we go into Vietnam, again, the same kind of cold defending the South Vietnamese and the North Vietnamese. But even that was even worse than it was in Korea, because we really didn't have a mission accomplished goal. You look at the research, and you find out that, you know, the people on top in both our military and our government was getting us into a war where they think they couldn't even win, which is a really odd concept given how powerful the United States even was back in the 60s and 70s, and yet in the Vietnamese you were assuming was nowhere near the power of this newly born superpower in the United States. However, nonetheless, they didn't think they could win, and one of the reasons why they didn't think they could win is that they constantly tied their hands in what targets they wanted to strike, what targets they didn't want to strike. They didn't want to strike anything that had any Soviet citizen or Soviet military apparatus in the area, unit or whatever. They didn't want to attack anything that had Chinese, elements there to it, because they didn't want to involve them directly because of fear of nuclear war, especially with the Soviet Union. So the targets were always kind of soft, and that was said. Every actual battle in our fight in Vietnam, we actually won, but we had no mission accomplished. We had no goal. And it's one of those things is that we see that now in these wars that we had in Iraq and Afghanistan, where, well, we still have people there, but we're sort of there maintaining the status quo and mitigating any uprisings of violence. Ever so often you'll hear things about one or two soldiers gets killed as a roadside bomb, but no real direct conflicts. But we're still there. We're still there, our soldiers are there as the medications that people are taking. We are there to fight the symptoms, not the problem. And there we're at. It was like, holy shit, that's kind of interesting. I don't know if we have the will to do it as a country. Because once again, we get into a situation where we do not have a specific goal. Okay, we went to the war in Iraq. I don't know why we went to a war in Iraq. You said there was weapons of mass destruction. Okay, well, you didn't find any. If it was an honest thing to topple Saddam Hussein for the Iraq War, people would have gotten behind that. There was it was suggested that there was an attempt on GW's father's life on that, and I would understand getting pissed off at that. I mean, there's a lot of people who said that we should have toppled him in the first Gulf War instead of leaving him in power. If that was an honest thing, while we're in the Middle East, even though Afghanistan is nowhere near Iraq, why don't we just take this little detour? Let's not. I don't necessarily want to continue to mitigate this, but the point is, going from that back to where we are at now, we are in this catch-22, where we do want to get out of these wars, we do want to get out of these conflicts, but all we're doing is we're mitigating the symptoms. We don't do anything, we don't put our intended force into really ending the problems. And not just ending the problems militarily, but, eliminating the causes that would allow these things to fester and grow and become a threat again. And that takes more than military, that takes diplomacy. That takes reaching out and trying to understand each other. But it doesn't take just cutting and running and abandoning our allies. Especially allies that has been screwed over repeatedly, indirectly and directly by us. You think about the bravery. Like you see reports of how Kurdish fighters go after their enemy. There was an article about a unit of female uh, Kurdish fighters who was really in there to take on ISIS because obviously they're the way they treat their women and the second and third class citizens, and these ladies kick their ass, which is great. So you hear stuff like that, and it's like, it gets you right there. That's powerful. Feel pride that these are your friends, and we're proud that we can back them. And now we're not backing them. So that's happening. Another thing that is was reported to be happening, or will be happening, maybe. It's not definite, so let's not go overboard on this. But the other thing we kind of heard yesterday, that the Trump administration is considering or is going to be pulling out of the Open Skies Treaty, which allows the United States and our allies to partners in Europe to monitor Russian military deployments. Withdrawal risks dividing the transatlantic alliances. People say the Russian interference is bullshit, thinking that they didn't interfere in the 2016 election, or they weren't helping Trump and Trump isn't helping them. Trump is not giving them like a soft treatment. They don't believe that they believe that Trump is being hard on them with sanctions, when in fact Trump had to sign the sanctions laid down by the Congress and Senate, kicking and screaming because everyone voted in such numbers in both House and the Senate that he couldn't veto it. And even as he was signing it, he was whining that he didn't want to sign it. Yeah, these people who think that he's all tough on Russia and there was no Russian connection, bullshit. This is true. Bullshit. He pulls out the Open Skies Treaty. We're not going to watch Russian troop deployments. We're not going to watch them in eastern Ukraine in their active military against the Ukraine while they're doing their subversive shit underneath. All the while, from last week we find out that we're squeezing Ukraine so that they can help investigate Trump's rival, Joe Biden. So, open sky treaty. Right? Open Sky Treaty allows the United States and our allies and partners in Europe to monitor Russian military deployments. Observational flights under the treaty have generated additional information regarding Russian military action in Ukraine and provided a check on further Russian aggressions there. NATO allies and partners, and Ukraine in particular, have repeatedly stressed the importance of the Open Skies Treaty for the efforts in monitoring Russia's military. Withdrawal risks dividing the transatlantic alliance and would further undermine America's reliability as a stable and predictable partner when it comes to the European security. If the administration is indeed considering the change of status on the treaty, it must be part of a transparent process that includes a thorough integrating review in consultation with Congress, and that provides other signatories a clear understanding of their intentions. To my knowledge, the administration has not held significant consultations with our allies and partners on this matter. Such consultations are prerequisite to successfully navigate any major policy shift with the treaty. What the hell is that? You know, I said um, a video or two ago when we heard about Trump wanting moats dug up and filled in water and snakes and alligators and bullshit and shoot migrants in the legs. I called him a child a childish, cruel cartoon. This is cartoon bullshit here. This is what you see of a cartoon villain on Saturday morning. For those of us old enough to remember Saturday morning cartoons. All right, so yeah, there was nothing with Russia, so now we're pulling out of the thing where which helps us monitor Russian troop movements, especially in Ukraine. You know, the place we're having a protection racket with. God's sake, people, what's going on? What's the fuck's these blinders that some of you just decide to wear that you refuse to see anything else? Defend this. Justify this. Please. I dare you. You can't. Or maybe, you know, maybe it's just a joke. Because that is now the latest offense for Trump's bullshit lately. You know, his minions like Jim Jordan's or Matt Gaetz or what the fuck his name is, and just say, "Oh, he was just joking. He was just pulling your leg." You know, Marco Rubio said the same thing. He was just trolling you. He was trolling you with that. Yeah, the thing is that we have articles that says that on his conversation with Xi Jinping in June, he mentioned the Bidens. If it's a joke, why is there conversations about this? Why did the Chinese foreign ministry had to go and comment on a joke then? Because he did. He says the Chinese are not going to meddle in the affairs of the United States. They have no interest. They trust the United States can handle it on their own. Joke. Yeah. And all the while, you got the real joke. Trump's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, who's globetrotting around and yet goes on TV, goes and he goes on TV, like he even goes on Fox, and he rattles this nonsense about the Bidens and how he's going to be a hero and so forth. He holds up papers that says that he says are affidavits on them until anyone actually zooms in on the paper and it's actually printouts from like a pro-Trump conspiracy theory site on national fucking TV. It makes you wonder if these people understand the concept of technology. And when the Fox host is like trying to slow his roll on his conspiracy theories and try to bring some sense and let's pretend, then he accuses him of being part of the military, part of the media conspiracy against Trump. He's a Fox host. He's waving his hands pretty much like Trump. And what I brought up last time around, Rudy kind of confirmed it, that the information he tried to send to the State Department to reinforce his conspiracy theories on the Bidens, he falsified the packaging to say it's from the White House. Admitted to that. So he's sending falsified documents. And State Department caught it, sent it to the IG, and the IG sent it to them, especially saying, this is falsified bullshit that they were trying to send to us, and we're going to give it to you so you can see what's going on here. You have a senator who loses his shit on Chuck Todd on Meet the Press on Sunday, shouting over him. I never seen Chuck Todd get pissed off. I mean, he was getting pissed off because this guy was trying to talk over him, blaming him for being part of the media conspiracy like Rudy was, saying that, wants to investigate all of 2016. Oh, where were you in 2016 where you didn't give a shit about Russians and now you're going to give a shit about the bullshit of Ukraine? Really? And because the reason why it was such a point of contention is that originally this Senator Johnson, said he winced when he saw the transcripts of the Ukrainian call. Now he's not. When he was asked why were you wincing, he refuses to answer. He refuses to acknowledge it. He just goes into the talking points of the new talking point line. I suspect that Senator Ron Johnson, has been in the Senate a while. Maybe, I'll have to look it up, but let's say ballpark he was there longer than 10 years, okay? Which would mean one of his colleagues was Senator Joe Biden. Same guy he's raking over the coals. And his son. Over a bullshit conspiracy theory that was debunked. And the other reason why there's an investigation now is because we have the lifeline of Ukraine hanging over them. A buddy of Vladimir Putin, our president, Donald Trump, who in that transcript, do us a favor. We'll talk about those Javelin missiles, but first let's talk about CrowdStrike and the Bidens. All that really bad stuff and all that corruption. Why is he getting $50,000? Woo! You know what? It's funny is that I have not heard an answer to why not. People think that, wealthy or political influence people, if their children happen to be on the board of something or other, domestically or foreign, they're just getting perks and this and that. Okay. All right. Could you point to something that was done illegally? Can you? The Trumps, their fingers are all over the place around the world. Trump's kids, thing is that I can also say it is in bad form. That it is kind of this kind of thing. Rich people get away with something, but with Hunter Biden being on there, fine. He put his name on there. Same thing as the Trump kids can put their names on it. Ivanka has like 16 trademarks from China. I'm sure none of that shit's gonna get tariffed. But they're not doing anything illegally. The Trump kids are not doing anything illegally, even with all this influence throughout the world. And Hunter Biden isn't doing anything illegally either. So where is this corruption? And that's I brought this up last time. The word corruption is now in Donald Trump's lexicon of the 8 different words he remembers every day. The thing is that we never describe what this corruption is. Well, there's a lot of corruption. There's total corruption. The Bidens, that was all corruption. Okay, well, what was the corruption? I don't know. No, I do know, but I can't tell you. It's classified. Oh, look, wavy hands. If you're not going to tell us what the corruption is, then you don't know. Or you're just making it up. I think, there's once again, this is not just a Trump thing. This is what I've been noticing the past 10, 20 years. Is the emphasis on buzzwords. And buzz phrases, the shock and awes. And so forth, where we get these words in our lexicon through our politics, and you use them in your rallies, and you use them on your posters, you use them as your chants and your mantras, but you don't really go into specifics as to why or what. Just saying corruption doesn't do anything. Explain what the corruption is. What do you think Hunter Biden did that incidentally he wasn't being investigated of when this prosecutor, who not only the Obama administration, the international community wanted gone because he was soft on corruption, and that he has one of these inklings of support towards Russia in their subversive action to destabilize Ukraine. I mean, sometimes you have to force to reiterate yourself, and I'm forced to reiterate that the Ukrainian prosecutor general said there was nothing that the Bidens did wrong. There were no charges, there was no criminality whatsoever. But in our state of being, in our politics, you just throw a hint of illegality, even if it doesn't exist, then people will be spoon-fed it. You say something long enough and people will browbeat people to just start nodding their heads. Yeah, fine. They did something wrong, it's awful. Oh, well, you believe they did something wrong? Yeah, I guess. Oh, if you guess that, then I guess that must mean that it was Ukraine that was interfering in our election. Sure. I don't know how or why, but fine, whatever. Okay, good. So, if that's the case, and Russia didn't do anything wrong, and we can free Paul Manafort, which that was another side venture about all this. There's actually a lot of little side things that was going on while Giuliani and Barr and all these bullshit was doing these little machinations. Because, once again, on the surface, it's all about the Bidens. And then, underneath, it became, so what about Paul Manafort and that Ukrainian oligarch who was serving the needs of Russia? Well, maybe Paul Manafort is innocent of all that, so we can pardon him now. And even still farther under that, we find out a couple of days ago that Giuliani and some of his own little minions were trying to get information of the gas company. So a little insider trading. Get a little bit more money out. Again, it goes back to an interesting phenomenon that happens with Trump specifically. Anything he accuses other people of is things he's doing himself. Now, if they're talking about corruption with this national gas company in Ukraine, well, they're doing insider shit with that to get money. They're doing that. The vague things they're accusing Hunter Biden, and by extension Joe Biden, because of the time frame of him pressuring the prosecutor to resign, even when the prosecutor wasn't even investigating Hunter Biden, they're doing that shit too. So much of this is just floating around in the ether. So again, you kind of like get lost in all this noise. It's like, them going after the foreign ambassador of Ukraine, finding out that Rick Perry was involved in the calls, and as soon as we hear that Rick Perry is thinking of resigning from heading up the Department of Energy, that's when you hear starting Trump says, it was Rick Perry's idea all along. Rick Perry wanted me to talk to them. Now we kind of understood that Rick Perry had no idea what the Department of Energy did. He didn't realize part of his job was about nuclear energy. Maybe he just thought it was just about coal and about oil. But it is an interesting connect the dots. And not only we had this conspiracy theory with Hunter Biden and this Ukrainian gas company, that Rick Perry, who runs the Department of Energy, is involved. in making connections with this gas company, or at least with the industry in general in Ukraine. It's interesting. I think Rick Perry is going to be a fall guy for this. I don't think, but then again, I don't think anyone's going to believe it. But again, it's one of these things. It's like an endurance test. Is that we kind of see clearly what's happening here, but while this is being browbeaten into people's heads from not only Trump talking about it, but the media, responding to it, reacting to it, and then the response and reaction towards the media, and it just becomes this whole big murky, clusterfuck storm of clusterfucks on the horizon. And it's just like, the people who are casual into politics, God bless them who don't pay attention to this stuff. But then again, when they get into the polls, they don't realize what's going on, and you have that. But everyone else, who's not all that vigilant, shall we say, it's just like, fine, whatever, fine, Hunter Biden killed gas. I don't know, whatever. Yeah, corruption. Ugh. And then you'll move on from that. And then it's like, oh, since all that is now true, then you don't really think I should be impeached, do you? I don't know. Whatever. Just get off my TV. Stop tweeting. People be like that. It's just like you beat people down mentally and emotionally. And it's like, fine, whatever. You go back around all these topics. You go back to what's happening in Syria with our pullout or suspected pullout, or officials saying, oh, we're not pulling out. That pissed off a lot of Republicans. And it's fine. It's great that you're pissed off about this, that he's betraying our allies. But still, at the same breath, you say, well, I still don't want him impeached. Him trying to get China and Ukraine to investigate his political rivals, that's fine. Extorting Ukraine to do our bidding, that's fine. What is this compartmental thing that Republicans or not hardcore Trump supporters, but those supporters who think they have no other options? How do you break this down where you are not okay with him betraying our allies, pulling us out of a situation, and just stand idly by while the Turks move in and potentially kill off those allies that have been fighting hard for you? You'd find that a problem. But then on the other compartment, you're totally okay with him eliciting help from foreign actors, foreign powers, to investigate a political rival. And he dares say he's obligated under the Constitution to do this. For this vague corruption that is just a word. There's no action. We don't hear, we don't see anything. There's nothing. There's no evidence. Just the word. I'm going after corruption. He's going after corruption. Donald Trump going after corruption. It's like a plumber snaking a drain, and then goes home and lives in a sewer. Really? But so many people are upset about his Syrian action. Even his buddies are acting up. Pat Robertson, of all people, who does his best at 700 Club every other second to try to deify him. So just to, no matter what he does, savior of the human race, he might lose the mandate of heaven if he goes ahead and removes our influence from Syria. What's the state of being of our religious consciousness in this country if he has a mandate from heaven. The people are resigning over this. It's people are just all upset and all up in arms over this, and just skipping out. And it doesn't much matter. Doesn't matter to anyone else. It doesn't register for Trump. I mean, the worst case scenario that you can assume is factual is that he made a deal for there to be a Trump Tower in Istanbul, while we could just go ahead and sidestep and let the Turks push through Syria. Wouldn't that be awful? Wouldn't that be grotesque? Knowing that a Trump Tower being built in Istanbul will be built on the foundation of dead Kurds. I don't know how else to say it. And another thing, that maybe all this stuff that is out there to distract us when he's being a racist asshole, when he's doubling down and tripling down on something awful he said or what policy he's doing. Maybe it's also to keep out of the headlines that Trump has been ordered by the New York courts to turn over 8 years of tax returns to the Manhattan DA. A federal judge on Monday rejected President Trump's efforts to shield his tax returns from the Manhattan state prosecutors, calling the president's argument that he was immune from criminal investigation repugnant to the nation's governmental structure and constitutional values. Judge said that. The decision from Judge Victor Mariel of Federal District Court in Manhattan was the first significant ruling in a case that would require Mr. Trump to hand over his tax returns and ultimately test the limits of presidential power. The judge dismissed the lawsuit that had been filed by Mr. Trump, who was seeking to block a subpoena for 8 years of his personal and corporate tax returns. The Manhattan District Attorney demanded the records in late August as part of an investigation into hush money payments made in the run-up to the 2016 presidential election. Mr. Trump's tax returns, however, remain protected for now. His lawyers quickly appealed to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals in Manhattan, which agreed to temporarily delay the enforcement of the subpoena while it considers arguments in the case. But if that appeal doesn't go through, he has to give up 8 years of his tax returns that he's been hiding all this time. Wonder what's in there. Not all around good day. For Trump or for everybody else in the world. So what do you think, guys? Think he's still your savior? Still the chosen one? Like into the last king of Israel? Chosen by God? As he or whoever was writing the tweet at the time, you believe that his wisdom is great and unmatched? Dalai Lama, Gandhi, they're not Trump. I leave it to you to draw some conclusions as to what's going on. You're going to join those who are flailing their hands, saying that Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff are committing treason by doing their Article 1 duty in putting in an impeachment inquiry. I think it's okay that Trump supporters put up $50,000 to find out the identity of the whistleblower. In an age where Trump supporters put bombs in mailboxes, stockpile weapons, go to El Paso 9 hours from their homes just to kill Mexicans in a manifesto dedicated with words echoing Trump's own rhetoric. That's all. That's all okay. The same, one of the same, one of the two Trump supporters that put up the money for the whistleblower came out, had this really weird press conference accusing Elizabeth Warren of having a sexual affair with a young Marine in a BDSM manner. Just scandalous thing, right? Whether it's true or Sarah, Elizabeth Warren denies it, and it's not true. If it was true, good for her. This would be her business. With an of-age person, she bagged a Marine. Problems? Were you wanting him, Jacob? I would say good for her. But then again, I'm an idiot. Guys, come on. Democrats, where are we going to put up to be the nominee for President of the United States? Seriously, this is your election to lose. President Trump is helping us with his antics, with his bullshit. But you have to play. But he's don't let him run a narrative here. As if Trump can't tie his own shoes, he can still be a savant enough to know how to control a narrative, to control perception. He's been doing it for decades. You want to, let's say, run the impeachment. You make everything crystal clear. You handle his antics. Because people not only support him, they're entertained by him. He's the dancing bear in the rallies. Don't let him run the narrative. Keep control of it. Keep a death lock on it. Ignore the nonsense. Ignore the static. But if anything does sound meaningful that could turn heads, clamp it down. For those in Congress, that we find out that Rudy Giuliani is not going to comply with subpoenas, again following the same Trump line, that the State Department is not going to let an ambassador talk to Congress. They're going to block that. Grow some fangs, claws, get some balls. Subpoena people, and if they don't come, hold them in contempt and call the cops. Stop playing games. Or maybe you're not trying to play games. Maybe you're honestly trying to do this by the book. But the thing is that at some point you have to get tough. We're past that point. We're way past that point. I think Corey Lewandowski in front of the Congress should have been the rock bottom, where you hay and haws, oh, we might subpoena them, we might hold them in contempt, we're kind of considering maybe doing something considerably above those lines. No, you do it. This is the country we're talking about here. And what I said last time around, this is the right thing to do. And not a right thing because it's a political calculation. No, and it's regardless of how this could die in the Senate, this is the right thing to do. Don't hay and haw. The more you delay any of this, the more weaker your position becomes in perception. You have authority. Use it. You have capabilities and power of your office. Use it. Don't abuse it. Don't give them that out, but everything you can hold someone in contempt by the book. It is totally within your grounds. People can whine about it, but it's not wrong to do so. We have enough foolishness going on. I don't know what else to say here. I mean, you can really go the melodramatic route of how this could affect us in the United States for the future. How this is like we're in our decline, and Nero Trump is playing on his Twitter while the country burns. People worry about the livelihood of the whistleblower. Or people think that it's that it's far fetched and you're being dramatic. We just had an article yesterday of a Trump supporter flashing a gun at a woman because she had Elizabeth Warren bumper sticker on. I'm sure he's perplexed as to why the cops are on him. I don't know why. Behavior in adults are unbelievable. Where anyone would go, all right, why did you think that? Why did you think that that was even acceptable? The freaking teacher, I think it was middle school teacher. That was another article that said something to effect of when Greta was coming to town. That he said something to the effect of "not without my gun" or something along those lines. And it got investigated, and he's now removed as a teacher. Why would you say that about a 16-year-old girl? Why is that? Why would that be funny to you? There's a lot of shit out there that people have been throwing at this young lady. And all she wants to do is, defend the world for future generations so they can have breathable air and not die from the effects of climate change. But it is such a threat that you have to make jokes. And some people make some really sick fucking jokes. Rapey shit. Another one, no one posted something along those lines. And then he had to go and apologize to it. Why'd you thought that was funny to begin with? Because you put it on social media. Oh, this is funny. These keyboard warriors who will say the sickest, darkest, outlandish shit because they're safe in their mama's basement. When they come out and it's been discovered. I don't know how it can't be discovered. It's just on social media. But when it comes out, oh, I'm terribly sorry. I didn't realize that the world would be seeing my shit. You get situations like this where people will apologize and people will get fired and but you're missing a component. It's there should be someone that a public notary should be says okay, that should go something along the lines of okay, so you said that. Why did you say that? Oh no, I'm sorry. I don't care about apologies. I want to know why. Why you thought in your head that spilled vomitously out of your mouth that you thought that it was acceptable. That you thought that was funny. Can you explain that? Oh boy, no. Explain it. Because you felt confident enough to put it on your social media. You're confident enough to see it, that your people on your feed would see it, and people from their feeds could piggyback onto that feed and see your shit. And you were confident enough that there's nothing wrong with this. Why? Because that is actually an interesting question for 2019. Why do people believe that certain comments, certain suggestions, certain direct and indirect statements that is disgusting and beyond harmful and downright evil, you think people are going to find funny? Or they're going to condone? Or they're at least going to tolerate? You know, people have a misconception when it comes to this First Amendment. You know, they'll say the most darkest evil shit, and then they'll go, "Oh, First Amendment, you can't stop me." No, let's see. That doesn't mean there isn't a consequence. When people get fired from that, they're mystified as to why they got fired. The First Amendment is keeping you from getting jailed. They're getting put in prison. You know, back in the day, colonial stuff, when we were under the boot of England, where certain things, you know, for certain gatherings, like in the Fourth Amendment, certain gatherings were not allowed. See, that's when that was. The First Amendment guarantees you freedom of criminal consequence, mostly. Last thing I'll say that I saw something on social medias where, you know, someone was lamenting over the phrase "get out of my country" being considered a slur. Why is it being considered a slur? And I commented the fact of, you know, why is it always, you know, people like this always complain about not being able to say the sickest and darkest shit. And the same type of guy who's like, well, why can't I say the N-word? That's so bad. Pout. Why is it in your head? For all this, 2019, what happened to Greta? What I don't know, these other people that come up and down, you see these articles. Why do you think that is okay in your head? Just say it or think it. Thinking it is fine, you know. No thought police here. But we do want explanations. You know, just someone says something very nasty about someone that gets found out and they get fired. They hope no one asks questions. They just want to go, "I'm sorry, fire me, I'll go away, I'll disappear into the darkness." No, just let's analyze that. Let's get a therapist in here. Let's talk about this. And let's make this into a trend throughout our country in this day and age. So why people think that they have such bravery in their depravity that they can say things publicly, at least on social media. And then when it becomes negative, then they feel shame because other people didn't like what they said. There can be a lot of dark things rolling around this head. But I don't say them, and I can be ashamed of even thinking them. Where's your shame? Random people out there. Alright. I've gone off on my tangent. Really just wanted to vent and rage over what we're doing to our allies, what we're doing to the Kurds. The prospects of us going out of the Open Sky Treaty. If you don't think that's not a connection towards Putin, that and the Syria thing, because Putin would also be happy with that, and Assad would be happy with that, Erdogan would be happy with that, so all the autocratic dictators would be happy with that. If you don't see there's a problem with that, and you're still trumping along on the Trump train, you don't have a limit. You don't have that dividing line, because you would not tolerate anyone else going anywhere close to that. There would be pitchforks and torches outside the White House if Obama did anything like this. You all got pissed off with him when he didn't do follow through on his red line. He's a betrayal! How dare he! He's a coward. He's not doing anything. People are trying to praise Trump for pulling pulling these troops out. He's finally stopping the wars. He's doing shit. He's gonna make it more dangerous. Watch those 10,000 ISIS fighters that are imprisoned. Watch them disappear. Until they show up. Show up there. Show up anywhere. And as long as we're giving cause to desperate people, whether it's pulling out, betraying the Kurds, or reinforcing Saudis with our arms deal so they continue their war in Yemen, then you give people who are desperate, who are downtrodden, people who are probably not our enemies at the start, but if we are directly or indirectly causing harm in their lot in life, then they're susceptible to the whispers. They're susceptible to the propaganda. They're susceptible to the arm that goes onto their shoulder and go, you know, this is terrible. This is what the great Satan is doing to you. This is what the other is doing. Or doesn't that sound familiar? The other. Ooh. Fearful that here. I don't know, guys. But we're not on a right track in terms of that. Trump is emptying out his National Security Council, so there aren't too many people who could be whistleblowers. All about him, not just on his rant, not just on my ranting, but that's what he thinks of himself. It's all about him. It's all about the benefit of him. Kurds will die for a Trump Tower. You find any other justifiable reason? The Republicans would like a justifiable reason. And they're the ones who are backing him and talking that it's okay to talk to foreign powers to investigate his rivals. People are resigning from their posts in protest over this shit. And so far, we haven't heard a justifiable reason. So until then, Trump Tower is Istanbul. Alright guys, I will talk to you later, because no doubt there'll be plenty of things in the next 24 hours that will arouse my attention. The ranter rants because the urge to rant is rising, is always rising, and yeah, you have a good day.